Hello, everybody. Greetings to all. Welcome to the Snooker Hall podcast. I'm Dan Murren. The Welsh Open is done, and we are waiting for the World Open to kick off in Yushan. So during this fallow week, I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to bring a guest onto the podcast. And I'm very happy to say that snooker referee Kevin Dabrowski is here with me. Kevin, welcome to the Snooker Hall podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So Kevin, where are you from?
That's a tricky question, actually, because it's hard to pinpoint one place. I was born in Germany, but I'm not German. I was born to Polish parents who are from a city in the middle of the country. So I would consider myself being from that middle of the country in Poland, although I wasn't born there. So I also lived in many places throughout the years. So it's really a hard question to answer.
But you speak, well, obviously you speak English perfectly. You speak Polish. Do you speak German?
Yes, I do speak German, not as well as I did when I was 5, I suppose, but I still do try to speak it from time to time to not forget it completely. And obviously, I'm a native Polish person, so I also speak Polish.
And what are your early memories of snooker?
That's actually a very funny question because my earliest memories are talking to a friend of mine at school when I was around 13, 14, and ridiculing her passion, which was snooker, because I thought it's very stupid. I mean, I guess I must also have an earlier memory than this because I remember knowing who Ronnie O'Sullivan is, but that's basically it. I didn't even know what he looks like or anything. I just knew the name. And then I was talking to this friend of mine, and she was a very big fan of Paul Hunter. So I still vividly remember when Paul Hunter passed away and we were having a discussion about it. So these are like my earliest memories. I remember being shocked that such a young person that a person could pass away at that age. So that was like also a pretty important moment, I guess, because I still remember it. So that must have been struck, And anyway, I guess that friend of mine would. I'm thinking sometimes what she must think now, seeing that I referee snooker and I was making fun of it so many years ago. So that. Yeah. So these are more or less my earliest memories.
And can you play snooker well, or are you not very good?
Well, I did play on a decent level, but we would have to define what it means to play snooker well. I did manage to win a few Polish championship medals in my career, so I was trying to, but I wasn't really, really good. I was just decent. I was acceptable. So that's so I would say I can play it on a decent level, but it's nothing extraordinary.
What's your high break?
It's 110.
Okay. So this, I think, off the top of my head, is the highest break for a referee who's been on the show, actually. Okay,
There
so
are
you are
referees
pretty good.
who play pretty well and better than me, I suppose. I know that's Greg Cornelio, who isn't refereeing anymore, but he was a prominent referee a few years back. I remember he was participating in some professional events, I think, like not fully professional, but like some. I don't remember the name of that tour that was played. Those pro-ams like 10 years ago. Something. I know he was participating anyway. I know he was really good. I heard the story of him beating Martin O'Donnell at one of these events or something. So he was really, really good.
It's no mean feat, yeah?
And I'm just decent, I would say.
Okay, but you've hit a century break. That's more than most people could say. So, yeah, maybe you're being slightly modest here, I think. Yeah. Which other sports do you follow?
I like tennis very much, especially that Polish players are pretty high ranked now. So that's a lot of fun to watch that. Yeah. I also like football, but I'm not a enormous football fan. I just like watching it from time to time, especially on the national level. And I also like the German league. Now it's maybe less interesting because it's less competitive than it was. Maybe this season is slightly different, but when I was watching it 15 years ago, you could never really say who's going to win. But the last 10 years were, well, They're pretty
Yeah,
one-sided.
one horse race. Yeah. No, no, yeah, the German league. So there were a few years in the 2000s. Who won it? Dortmund won it. Werder Bremen won it. Stuttgart,
Wolfsburg, like
Wolfsburg, of course, yeah,
many different teams.
and Bayern won it once or twice as well. But then yeah, Bayern just took over. Yeah. Well, thankfully, snooker's like that, not like that. So yeah.
Not at the
How?
moment, at least. It was like that, I think, 30 or 40 years ago, but it's not
Yeah, the
now.
World Championships. Yeah, there was definitely the dynasties of the Davis and the Hendry and the Reardon, of course, before that. Yeah. Yeah, it's more competitive now. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. It's more interesting to watch, more exciting, more jeopardy. How did you get started as a referee in snooker?
I remember when I started to play, I wasn't very good. I was still a teenager, but I wasn't really uh, good at all, to be honest. So I thought if I want to get involved in the sport, I would have to do something else. So I did my referees course. I didn't referee all that much, but I did do a few events like the Polish National Championship, that just to meet a few people, see what it's like, see for myself what the standard is, etc. And then after some time, I did get good enough to play in those events, so I stopped refereeing for a while. But after a few years, I remember doing a amateur European Championship, also just for fun, just to hang out with people and stuff. And I didn't really plan to referee or anything past that time. I just saw it as a one-time event, more or less. Uh, but then I was playing in a PTC event in Poland, and I lost pretty soon. And it turned out that they're a referee down because somebody was sick. So World Snooker asked me to step in, and that's how I stayed. So it was just a coincidence. Both my first initial refereeing course, just I did it for fun, and then starting on doing the more serious events.
And then I suppose the natural progression, I would guess, maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, is to go through maybe a lower level of snooker and then you sort of make your way to the main tour, the WST tour.
Yes, of course. That's also what I did. It just wasn't, planned in any way. It was just a coincidence after a coincidence. So I just, wanted to do it for fun first. But just as you mentioned, you do the amateur events first to learn, to actually be understand the game, understand what you're doing at the table. And I guess depending on the timing, sometimes you can start your career, you can progress quicker or slower depending on the needs, on how many referees are actually doing amateur, professional, or even local events. So it all depends on the timing. I guess my timing was perfect at that time, just as for many other referees who are doing professionally now as well. But there's always this there's always this natural progression, as you mentioned, because you can't start doing professional events before you actually learn how to do it. So I also, of course, had my learning curve. So I would say that, considering only from the perspective of refereeing days, I was quite experienced, because even one European Championship is like 2 or 3 weeks long, or it was at that time. So it was just a good time, I suppose, to also start refereeing on any level.
And some of the players I speak to on this podcast, they will say that the jump from the amateur game or the junior game in some cases to the pro game, the intensity is a lot higher. There's a lot more attention, a lot more viewers. There is, you would say, maybe more at stake in some cases. Is that the same for referees? And were you nervous for your first pro match?
I would say it's pretty much the same as for players, I suppose, because refereeing amateur events is more relaxed, definitely, and I still do it for fun from time to time, just to uh, get like this club atmosphere, something which brings back memories from the past. So it is a very relaxed atmosphere at amateur events, especially national events. With professional events, it's different because it's serious business, it's work, and obviously it's played for a lot of money, and many people, many players depend on it to to pay the bills. So it's a very serious business. So there can be a lot of tension involved. Obviously, after so many years, you don't really stress anymore. That's not something that you would ever feel, I think. If anything, it's tension just uh, to be focused and everything. So I think it's a good tension, which just keeps you focused. But obviously, when I was starting, I was stressed. I always handled stress pretty well, so it was in no way affecting my refereeing. And I think that's the most important thing. But I guess everybody feels that stress when they start or when they do their first TV game, uh, because that's very different. Obviously, you're thinking about, oh, what if I do something wrong now? Everybody will see it, and that will be not good. So yeah, I guess it's also a natural thing, and after a few TV games, you just you know it just goes away.
And what is the most difficult part of the job for you?
I have no idea, to be honest. It's the most difficult part. I'm doing it for such a long time now that I'm not really thinking about it actively or anything. I guess the most difficult part, I would say, is that you have to make decisions very quickly. Uh, I studied law, and when you do law exams, you have like these cases that you need to solve to to pass. And you get like, there's this guy and he hit this person, but this person, etc., etc. And you have a lot of time to think about it and to solve that, to write it down, to change your minds. And when you're refereeing, you also get these cases in real life, but you have absolutely no time to think about them. You have to decide straight away. You don't even have 10 seconds. You need to make your decision instantly. And I think that can be tricky because obviously the rules are very complex. And when you know the rules pretty well, you don't really think about how difficult they actually are. And only when you visit Twitter or see some of the situations in local leagues, for example, involving players who play the game for 10, 50, 20, or even more years, and they don't know the rules all that well. So that just makes you think, maybe it's not so straightforward. So when a decision depends on like very detailed things and you don't really have any time to think about it, then that can be particularly difficult. But I guess these situations don't happen that often, and as soon as they happen once, every other referee already has a a situation from the past they can rely on. And obviously, these situations get discussed, so it gets easier with every situation that happens.
And is that something that referees speak about amongst themselves? You know, this decision that you had to make, and maybe if you think that maybe another referee might have handled something differently, do you offer each other feedback and advice in that way, or do you just let each other do your own jobs?
It depends, I guess. Obviously, we get assessed, so whatever big situation happens, it gets discussed at least with the person who made that call. But obviously, we're also good friends, so we also speak about situations. We're curious about each other's opinions, and we also discuss it just to pass the time. So of course we do talk about stuff, and it definitely helps you be sharp and be ready to make whatever decision you have to make at the table.
One decision you made earlier in this season got a lot of attention, especially online. And if I remember correctly, it was in Belfast at the Northern Ireland Open. You called a foul on Hossein Vafaei. I mean, I suppose what I took from it was that the level of concentration and the level of detail required. It's not just, okay, someone's hit the wrong ball, foul. It's there's so much that a referee has to be aware of at all times. What was Well, I'm not going to say what could you tell us about. Well, yeah, what could you tell us about your way of thinking in that moment?
Well, it's actually funny that this situation was so widely discussed because it, I think, I mean, from my perspective, it's nothing particularly interesting because it was, the most straightforward situation of all time when it comes to fouls. So I'm going to disappoint you, and I can't really say all that much because uh, I did say all that I was thinking at the time at the table. So I see the situation exactly the same now as we're talking here. But I guess concentration wise, it's hard for me to say again because obviously I'm under the curse of knowledge, so I'm doing it for some time now, and you just do these things automatically. So it's hard to judge from my perspective if you need to concentrate all that much or if it's just a very easy thing to spot. But I guess uh, as I said at the table, I can only repeat that I saw it instantly and I was absolutely convinced that there was a foul. So that's what I called. The thing I was surprised by the most is that you could actually see it uh, in the camera, which I wasn't expecting. I thought it's such a uh, extremely small difference that you wouldn't be able to tell in the screen, but you can. Um, I guess the interesting part in all of this is also you mentioned this was big in social media, and I saw that on Facebook only the video from that on Eurosport's official profile had like over 3 million views or something, which is really a lot, I'd say. And there were thousands of comments, and which surprised me the most is that people really don't get how this works rule wise because obviously it's different in snooker than in pool, for example, because in snooker the cue ball has to be within the lines, which means that it can be only within those lines. Where in pool, for example, when you break off, three balls have to either uh, get potted or they have to pass like the balk line, whatever it's called officially in pool. And as it's enough for a ball just to be over that line in the sense that its edge is over that line and the base of the ball isn't touching that line. So that's different. Maybe that creates the confusion. I don't really know. So so yeah, I was very surprised by that. If again, since this involves me, I don't really have much to say in a sense if that was. Uh, I mean, I know the press and also the commentators have written about a lot about it, and they have also discussed it in detail. And there's an explanation from Alan McManus, I think, on Eurosport's website, which I saw. I think that covers it pretty well. But from my perspective, again, it was just any other situation, any other thing, and that it blew up so much just surprised me, basically. So I'm sorry for the disappointing
Oh
answer.
no, it's better to have an honest answer than a fluffy answer. Yeah, but I suppose I have two follow-on questions, whether it's this incident or that. So you noticed it pretty much straight away, but and in that moment it was easy. But if it's borderline and you kind of need to be sure, how do you, it must be difficult to check that without kind of giving it away to the player because that would give the player an unfair advantage. It's almost like you were saying, "Are you sure that's in the lines?" Can you try and see without letting the player know that something might be amiss? I guess is the question. And I don't, if I'm honest, I don't expect an answer for that, but that's just something I thought about. But in my opinion, Hussein, okay, he placed the ball, but an honest error, it happens. It's a foul. We move on. Now, if you suspected that a player was doing it to gain an advantage, could you award the frame to the opponent if you felt that they were deliberately trying to cheat?
Interesting question. So let's start from the first one. How can you tell? Usually you won't have to look at it that much because it's a very rare occasion. I think it can happen in amateur snooker more often, but in professional snooker, I guess one of the reasons why this foul from Belfast was so widely discussed is just because it's rare. So yeah, it is rare, and that means that usually you won't have to check anything because it just doesn't happen. And obviously, after you respot that many ball colors in your career as any professional referee, you generally get a feeling of when something is on the spot, or in this instance within the D, which also means on the spot because obviously the spots are just on the D line as well. So it's very easy to say just by looking at the ball colors if something is within the D or not. If you have any doubts about it, then obviously you can just move to the side and take a quick look without giving it away. I think that's how you would usually do it, and I think it works in the sense that the player is not going to notice. But again, these are so rare situations; it's not even worth discussing in detail from a perspective that there isn't really a system you should come up with, because it doesn't happen that often. When it comes to docking off the frame, well, that's I guess the thing that any referee would say at that point is, how can you be 100% certain that somebody's doing it on purpose? I mean, good luck with that. Obviously, mind reading is not a thing yet, and that's a pretty, a sport with a lot of sporting conduct, etc., and with a lot of courtesy and stuff. So I wouldn't really suspect anybody of doing any things like these on purpose, other than maybe, I don't know, in funny events with a lot of alcohol consumed or something in a pool hall, but I guess not in professional play.
This incident took place in the Waterfront Hall in Belfast. Fans will often say that it's one of the best. Well, it gets a lot of praise for the atmosphere and for the organisation of the event. What are your favourite venues to work in as a referee?
I like venues which are original and different, because it just gives you this feeling of an extraordinary situation. And I think the German Masters are very interesting from that perspective, because the tables are placed in a oval-shaped arena, which also makes it very different than any other event. You're very close to the fans as well. And from that perspective, it's not only a nice arena and a beautiful place, but just a place where refereeing is very much different, positional wise, because obviously as a referee, any step you make, any position you position yourself around the table is deliberate. So from that perspective, working under such circumstances just makes it slightly different, and it's an interesting thing to think about when you referee. So I like this place very much. Belfast is also very nice, definitely. It's a great city and a great arena.
And in terms of travelling to different venues in different cities, do you take care of travel arrangements yourself? For example, train tickets, plane tickets, hotels, or are you given your tickets? Who takes care of that?
It all depends. Obviously, World Snooker takes care of us at any time, and everything is paid for and provided. So from that perspective, if it's a short journey to, let's say, the UK, from my perspective, so from Poland, we generally take care of it ourselves to get the most comfortable connections and whatever suits us the most, and that's just the most comfortable way of doing it. But when it comes to overseas events, obviously we get support, so there are people there to help us out and to find the best connections and arrange anything we would need. So from that perspective, I think it's an ideal system, and it's very comfortable.
And I'm not sure how much you'd be able to tell us about this, what you're at liberty to divulge, but are referees, someone asked the question, are referees paid per session, per hour, per match, or for an event overall? I'm not sure what you can tell us about that.
I don't even know if that's any if it's any under if I'm any contractual obligation to not disclose any uh, information regarding my salary. I generally don't know, but what I can say is that when it comes to amateur snooker or any other snooker you'll be involved in, you obviously just get paid. You get a daily pay, and obviously depending on if it's a national event or a local event, it will basically depend on that will generally make that daily pay higher or lower or non-existent sometimes if you just do it at a club, but it's basically a thing that's been around for as long as I can remember, that you get a daily pay, basically.
Fair
It
enough.
would be funny. I mean, it would be cool to have like if you get paid by the hour, because you could, for example, just try and be very slow at the table, just slow.
Sandbag the snooker
Doing
match.
like a lot of technical breaks. Listen, I need this or that, and just stretch it out for as long as you can. That would be great. So I think I'll suggest that at some point.
Yeah, take 2 minutes getting the rest out from under the table. Yeah.
Yeah, and whenever you referee a quick play, you'll be like, oh no, please, not again. I have to
You're not
finish.
helping
Please
me.
don't do this to me. I mean, so yeah, so that would be a lot of fun.
Everybody avoiding Tepjai Undu because he knocks in a pot every 6 seconds. And in terms of the relationship with the players, obviously when you're at the table, professionalism is the most important thing. Impartiality is equally as important. Does that make it slightly difficult to be a casual acquaintance with the players, or how does that relationship work? I mean, I suppose everyone gets on quite well, I would assume, but you kind of have to maintain a distance, maybe, or
That's a very interesting thing. I know that in the past, referees and players had pretty close relationships, I guess. I read that in some of the books that have been published, written by players, etc. But currently, I think these are very professional relationships. So it's not like that you're advised, oh, don't do this or that, don't talk to these players privately. That's not allowed or something like this. That's absolutely not the case. But it's just natural that you don't really, since we obviously have different areas where we stay at during events. So there's an officials room, there's a players lounge. So there aren't really that many places you could just casually chat to each other than maybe the table, or when you introduce yourself to the player and tell them that you'll be refereeing their match. So from that perspective, it's just I guess the thing that possibly makes this different is if you know the player outside of professional snooker, which I, for example, obviously know the Polish players because we've been seeing each other at Polish events quite frequently. So that's different in the sense that I know them outside of professional snooker, and that's definitely the case for many other referees as well, who also know certain players from certain other places, or if you referee who's been working for 30 years, then obviously that also creates a connection. But other than this, I don't think we try to, build any lasting relationships with players or anything like this. So yeah, it's very professional now, and it's definitely different than, I don't know, 40 years ago or something.
Well, I think the extreme example of this would be after a tournament or one evening, you go out for dinner at a restaurant and another player's there and they'll wave and say, oh, they're a bit pally. What if you're paired, or what if you're selected to referee their match? You say, well, how do we know that this player didn't buy Kevin a pint? Some people can overthink this kind of thing.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing, but I guess that's the case with any other sport as well, because
Yep.
football referees, for example, can have closer relationships with certain players, which we know they have, because they disclose this at interviews and etc. And this doesn't affect them in any way, I think. Or I would hope so. And I don't think that any snooker referee ever would be affected by any personal relationship. So from that perspective, I just think it's the same in any sport. And even if a situation as you described would happen, I don't think anybody would, mention it, because there are so many. There are only so many players and referees, and obviously you referee certain players many, many times, and some of them you'll see for the first time, and it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I know this this person better than the other one, so I'll be biased. No, of course not. So in that case, I don't think this will ever be an issue.
And in terms of favoritism, being a favorite of the fans, anyway, there is a chant for you at the shootout. How do you feel about this? This must be an honor, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, come on, you must love it.
Of course.
It must be nice to hear that people, say this. It's clearly a gesture of respect and of admiration, so it must be really nice. And but maybe distracting, even just a little 1%.
Oh no, it's definitely not distracting, because when
Okay.
you referee at the shootout, which I like doing very, very much, it's one of my favorite events because it's so much different. It's just, it's great once a year. It maybe wouldn't be so nice twice a year, but it's really great once a year. And the level of concentration you have to, you have to be so focused at the table, because there are these different rules that also come into play, and you have to think about them, like the cushion foul,
Yeah.
or you have to be very focused with the time foul, obviously. You have to remember about all these things, so you don't really listen for anything else, etc. So yeah, the concentration is very, very high. It is obviously nice to have a chant, but I think the fans don't like me no more at the shootout now, because I was very strict with one of the rules last year, and that got the wrath on me. So the
What
chant
happened?
changed to "Boo, Kevin Dabrowski." So yeah, it's
What
slightly different.
happened?
I
What
think
did
it
you
was
do?
okay I mean, last year, but I'm not sure. Well, there was just a thing placed on a set which is not allowed, and I applied that regulation, and they weren't very, very happy about it. So, but maybe they don't remember anymore. So please don't tell them. Maybe I'll.
Keep them under our hat. So you say you like the shootout once a year, maybe not more than once a year. What other tournaments are you down to referee for the rest of the season
Obviously,
that
these
you
are.
know of?
Yeah. Obviously, at any time, this can change, but I will probably do the tour championship in Manchester, and I'll be waiting for any other dates past that, which obviously include World Championship qualifiers, for example. So
And I did receive a question. Has watching these players made you a better player? Just learning, just how they strike the ball, maybe shot selection, things like that. Has some of it rubbed off on you and helped your game on a personal level? Or?
That's an interesting question. I think it did, especially from the perspective of safety play. But it's not such a straightforward situation because the professional tables are very much different than the ones you'll be playing at amateur events. So the tactical play is slightly different. You'd generally be way more defensive on a professional table because it's just very difficult, and you'll be more attacking on any other table basically. But it did, I think, teach me a lot in the sense what of me. Obviously, when you referee, you have to think about the shots that the players will play, so you can position yourself in the perfect positions to see any potential fouls or be ready to pick out any ball and respot it, etc. With safety play, it's the same. You just have to be in the perfect position to see any fouls, to be ready to move to the next position, etc. So just thinking about what shot are they going to play next, etc. also makes you participate in that frame in a sense. So thinking about what safety shot the player could play next, and then seeing what they're actually going to play is also an interesting learning opportunity. So it definitely did. It obviously didn't help me pot balls better or anything, but the shot selection itself is definitely a thing you can analyze at the table because you actually have to do it when you referee.
So the tactical side, maybe it helps more than the technical side.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Yeah. And I suppose it's even more interesting because each player is different, and some will maybe take that chance and go for a risky part, and some will play it with a bit more caution and maybe try and find the balk area. So that's part of the fascination. It's the joy of the sport. Everybody's different. So, yeah. Kevin, it has been a delight. Thanks for taking the time to join the Snooker Hall podcast.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're always welcome back to come and speak to me again if you want to.
Sure, I'll be here next week, so see you there.
Take care.
I'm kidding. So.
A huge thank you to Kevin Dabrowski for joining the Snooker Hall podcast and sharing some stories about his career and his life. A wonderful guest, a really nice bloke. He is more than welcome back on the Snooker Hall podcast in the future. As I said at the top of the show, the World Open is upon us. Yushan is one of the more difficult places to get to from a UK-centric sport, but I'm not sure how much difference that will really make. Everyone has to go through the same journey to get there, so I still feel the best player at the end of the week will win the tournament. Keep an eye on your podcast feed over the weekend for a preview episode for that tournament. Just a quick look at some of the standout matches from the first round and maybe some potential clashes in the second and third rounds. Maybe I'll throw in a prediction or two for who might win the tournament. If you want to get in touch with the Snooker Hall podcast, the email address is contactus@thesnookerhall.com, and you can contact the show on X, Instagram, and on Blue Sky. The handle for all of those platforms is @thesnookerhall. That's it for today. Once again, thanks to Kevin Dabrowski for joining me. I hope you enjoy the episode. But until next time, take care.